Well, guys, I'm actually more on time than normal, which is surprising. Usually I'm about 15 minutes late. But today's topic and today's episode is going to be kind of an interesting one because I've been trying to get guys from my tournament trail to come on a live stream with me. And so far, Chris has been the only taker. So I've got another competitor down below, guy I've actually fished with a couple of times, coming on to hang out, talk fishing. So I'm going to let him introduce himself, and then we're going to get right into it.
Hey, what's up, guys? Brad here, joined the Slay Nation Trail this year. Not off to a hot start, but hey, it's been fun.
So I gotta send you that video, dude. Just starting right off, just automatically slamming you. I've got you on video catching that log that you caught in that last tournament.
Oh
I'm
man,
actually gonna be making a short of me catching mine. I might mash them together and then tag you in it.
that'd be pretty good actually, because I mean that wasn't just a log; that was like half a tree that I pulled
That
up.
thing was like literally bigger than your kayak. It was funny. So I gotta ask. So was this your first like kayak trail, or did you do tournaments before? Or
Yep. So this is the first trail I entered. I dabbled in the KBF series last year, and that's how I got started. And then I saw the Slay Nation advertisement, and I was kind of back and forth on it, and I was
yeah.
like, yeah, I'll give it a try, and I'm glad I did. But I mean, it's been a
It's
rough start for sure.
Yeah, well, to be honest, dude, the fact that he's the only guy paddling. We've got John boats with motors, we've got guys with pedal drives. He's the only guy with just paddle, and that does have a disadvantage. You can't cover as much water. It does make it a little harder, especially that last tournament, dude. That freaking Elmore tournament, dude. That wind got
Oh,
nasty.
dude, anytime there's wind, it changes everything I want to do. It's so
Yep.
frustrating.
And it's dude. So I gotta ask because I've been kind of worried about this. Like, is this something that you're planning on like continuing to do, or are you just kind of doing this season to feel it out and not really sure if you're going to return next year? Or
No, I'm gonna return. I'm gonna return. The the one thing this season's kind of helped me figure out though is that this guy back here is is not gonna cut it. So
yeah,
if you want to fish tournaments, being in a paddle, huge disadvantage. And I mean, it just you don't think about that stuff because it's like before fishing tournaments, like if it was a windy day, I just wouldn't go.
right.
It's
Yep.
or I'd pick a different spot to go at. Where now it's like I have to fish here, and then when the wind picks up, the rods are put away. I'm battling to stay in position, and it's just
Yeah.
everything's any game plan that you think you might have is out the window. So
I think, dude. So honestly, the reason I started doing tournaments is from a content creation standpoint for like the drama and like all that, but also like it's a good measuring stick because you think you're good. Like, not like you don't necessarily go in thinking I'm gonna win every tournament, but you go in thinking I'm a pretty good fisherman. I bet I can compete. And then when you get to a body of water that you don't always fish against other people that have different varying styles, it really forces you to learn. It forces you to change your approach at fishing. Like, because that's how I was, dude. Like, I have lakes around me that, I mean, the first event was my home lake, and you guys
yep.
saw, like, I know that lake. Like, I could fish that lake against any, I could probably put like Ike and Ellie or Gerald Swindle next to me in their bass boat and still outfish them on that lake. It's just because it's the one next to my house. But then you get to a lake you've never fished before, or a lake you don't have a lot of experience on, and all of a sudden things change, dude. The first trail I did last year, like I did a lot of like the monthly stuff, like the KBFs and the like one-offs, like the new Strike King tournament, all that. I did a lot of
Yep.
those, but I didn't do a lot of like true season-long trails until last year. And what I learned really quickly was I got in there and I got humbled fast. Like I blanked 2 out of 5 tournaments in Massachusetts,
Oh,
and
it'll
I didn't
definitely
even
wake.
fucking pickle.
It'll definitely wake you up. Like I didn't expect to come into this thing like being a winner, but I think I put it in my intro video I put up on YouTube. It was like I also wasn't expecting to be in last place. It's just like
Yeah,
it's like I mean it is what it is. I mean, you're gonna have your bad days of fishing. Like I mean Sunday,
yeah.
everybody had a bad day of fishing.
So we'll get into that right now, actually. So I have to admit, dude, that one shocked the shit out of me because I thought for sure we maybe had third going into that weigh-in. Like, I was like, we didn't get enough. Like, I didn't think we had enough. And that's the one thing that I haven't quite figured out with the guys in our trail, because the Williams boys, for example, like, they always seem like they're on something. Like, when you
No,
watch them on the water, they look so confident and they look like they're on something. So then that gets in my head and I'm like, oh man, dude, they've been going up and down that same bank for an hour and a half. They've got
oh
to have
yeah,
something going on there, you know? And then, like, you know, Jason's another one that, like, he always is like in a weird spot, but you see him and you're like, he's there's a reason he's there. Like, he's out in the
yeah.
middle drop shotting or something. And you're like, there's a reason he's there, you know?
Oh,
And
for sure.
I actually I'm starting to fucking hate the lack of using an app, but I love it at the same sense,
Right, because you don't know
because
where everybody else is at.
in my mind, like, I will and have slacked off at the end of a tournament or made bad decisions that cost me because I thought I was far enough ahead that I could just, like, home run and just try to go get a 20 or, like, go do just only big fish stuff and not worry about just catching and hoping that I can size up and not being able to check it. But that's the thing, is, like, even if we wanted to do the app, we really haven't had service in the last three. I don't. I mean, I
No,
live
there's
my
no
home
service at
airplane all the
Miles, and I got lucky at Elmore because there was like I have Xfinity, and there's like
time.
a couple camps because I pre-fished there a
Yep.
couple times that have Xfinity, so I was able to piggyback
Yep.
off their Wi-Fi and be able to talk and upload pictures. But other than that, you're right. There's no service, and that's most of Vermont lakes outside of Champlain,
Yep.
really.
Yeah, and
So
what's crazy, dude, I think too is, like, I want to try to develop an app next year. Like, we won't know where each other are, but the hardest thing, how do you? That's actually a good question to think about. Is how do you organize, like, when you're doing, like, a tournament, like when you're doing, like, the monthly that we're doing. If
yep.
you don't have service, do you just, like, take a
So
bunch of photos on your
I'll do the
phone and?
board picture,
Yep.
and I'll usually do a few of those, obviously, because you know how well they like to cooperate.
Yeah.
And then the last photo will be me holding the fish up
To
like
break
that,
it
and
up.
that'll help me create that bridge in between.
Yeah.
Okay, this is one fish, this is the second fish, and then obviously, then you got to go through and figure out what your calls are. But
Yep.
I mean, unfortunately, a lot of the apps I don't even bother anymore. I'll just submit them all and let
Yep.
them do the culling. But
That's honestly what I do with the monthlies, because, like you said, I do the same thing, but it's like a picture of my foot or picture of my pedal drive or, like, some other, because I've got the camera. So, like, I've got a higher resolution camera that I can actually just hold the fish up.
yeah,
And then I actually, a lot of my photos that I post are screenshots of videos, because what I do is I hold it up and I hold it still for a minute, and then I
yeah,
just screenshot that when I take my video, because that's going to be a better quality photo than trying to hold a phone, because it's
right.
actually really hard, especially with a paddle kayak, to hold a freaking fish, take a photo, and then you're just kind of yeeting across the fucking lake while you're waiting for the photo to
Yeah,
be
and I got my
taken.
paddle
So,
sitting in my lap at the same time. It's just
yeah,
like
and then you
because
have to kind of, like, react to wherever you're going, dude. It's like
yeah, because I got it
it's
set up. I got the holder on the side. You probably
yeah,
can't see it right now, but it's just like I don't have it in there because I could put it in there for maybe 30 seconds, and then I got to take it back out so I can reposition
yeah,
myself. Like unless it's a super calm day, and then I can kind of just hang out or the wind's blowing in the direction I want it to go.
yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely made me realize that you don't necessarily need a motor, but a
No,
pedal drive for sure
makes a big
is
difference.
key.
It really does.
I mean, just like that the Fairfield pond fish that you got there. Like
Yeah,
watching you reel that guy in, like he was pulling you towards the weeds and you were just as calm as could be, pedaling backwards and pulling him out of there. It's just like if I was in in mine, like he would have brought me right in there.
yeah, you would have been.
Yeah.
See, that's the one thing, dude. It's funny is I I instinctually do that. I had somebody call me out on that. Like, I was they were watching my video and they're like, I love how you, like, backpedal on hook set. And I actually realized it's really weird when you watch your own videos later. I'm sure you're kind of noticing that too, because you film quite a bit. Is like, you literally instinctually do stuff right before you set a hook that you don't even realize you're doing. Like I will start to backpedal before I hook set. And I catch it on my video all the time. Like I literally
Yeah.
am already like half a pump before I set the hook. I don't know why I know that I'm going to be setting the hook at that moment. Like it's just like one fluid motion, and I think it's just a
Right.
timing thing. But there's a lot of times where like you'll see me and you watch my video and you'll see me go, and then like hook set. Like it's like I almost feel like something's there or something's going on, and then my brain has to like process what's going on before I set the hook.
Yeah. It's
But
like
that is
second nature.
one factor of a pedal drive that I will say that's actually why I won't buy a Hobie. That's the only reason. The Hobie is a super solid platform. It's a super cool kayak, but I
Too
don't
many
think I would buy
mechanics.
one because I have to reach down and pull a lever to backpedal.
Yep. I would
And
say
I
it's not reactive. It still has the 360, but it's not. You still got to go down there, and that's the thing too. Is like at Elmore pre-fishing, I actually lost a pretty decent fish because I was screwing around trying to grab my net, and
yep,
that's when I started laying it down on the deck, like I noticed you do, because it's
yep,
easier to scoop
yep.
instead of reaching behind me trying to pull it out of a rod holder. Because as soon as I did that, lost tension on the rod right at the bow of the kayak, and he was gone. It was just like,
Let me
so.
let me tell you some hard lessons that my teammate has learned in the last couple of years or the year and a half that he's been fishing with me was, and it's funny, dude. It's like it's constant, like it's almost irritating, but not. Is like he will. I'll tell him, I'm like, dude, listen, you want to put your net in front of you. And he's like, why? And I'm like, because when you turn to grab your net from behind you, you're not looking at what the fish is doing. You're turning your body and you don't have a good position and you're going to lose that fish because that fish is going to get slack while you're trying to figure out what you're doing with your net. And that's the reason why he has that paddle. It's actually a paddle holder that he puts on there um, that I basically suggested. And then you kind of angle it a little bit and then it goes, sits on the front. So it's like out so you
Yep.
can reach, grab, and net and not have to worry about it getting hung up or whatever. But yeah, he actually, dude, I don't know if he told you or if I don't even remember if we told everybody the story of this, but it's going to be in the video too. But so he lost a fish that was in his net.
Oh, geez.
So he caught a fucking like 18, put it in the net, unhooked it, put it in the net, and he was drifting towards the shoreline. So he was trying to reposition himself, and the fish swam out of the net. The net turned in the
Oh,
water and swam out of the net. And that's because, and I will say, not only do you need a good position for your net, it's actually really good to have a deep hoop net. Because if you have a shallow net, they can jump out of that net or swim. I've had them swim
yeah.
out. Whereas if you have a super deep one, they really can't do much about it. But it's crazy, like the little details. And that's what you learn about doing this tournament stuff is like these little fine tuning things that, like, for instance, one of the things I do during a tournament that I never do it during fun fishing is I literally um don't I tie two spinning rods with the same bait because it's the only rod that I use with a leader. And if I get it hung on a log or I get a pike or something that smashes it, I can just switch rods and not have to retie a new leader so I can
Yep.
fish a little bit longer. It's stuff like that that I don't do any other time of the year. I don't do it anytime fun fishing. I don't have that set up. But when I do a tournament, I'll usually have two of whatever finesse bait is working tied because of that leader. Because if I don't do that, and I had it happen at Elmore, I got hung up on a rock and then I caught that smallmouth, and then I caught another fish after that smallmouth, and it stretched out my leader, and I was not really trusting it, so I just swapped rods real quick.
Yep.
That's little stuff like that that you kind of learn. But somebody joined into the chat, you might know,
All right.
Stoneman Lures, and I'm not sure
Up,
who's
man.
running the actual channel, but Bass and Brews podcast. If you guys haven't checked out their podcast, this is one of the first ones that I listened to. It's actually one of the ones I listen to a lot when I'm fishing, and they're actually part of the inspiration for me starting this podcast. So just saying, I'm not sure if that's Alex or Paul or who's running the channel right now, but they're hanging out with us too. So Dude, that PB, it's funny is that PB largemouth, that what ended up being my PB. I went
Yeah,
back and watched the footage. That ended up being that was the funnest PB, not only because it was, a good big bass, but that was the dock, dude. I went back and watched the footage from
yeah, I
there,
thought
and
so.
that
I
you
was
could
like,
see
there's
that
not many
sign
docks like
in the
that.
background on the other side of that dock. So that literally was the dock that he missed that fish on.
Yeah, and it was still there. Like what?
I
A
think that had to be the
week
same
later,
fish.
2 weeks later.
That had to be, if it wasn't the same fish, there is a lot of big bass on that dock because that other one was pretty comparable size.
Yeah. No,
And
you
and
knew it
again,
too. As
that's another
soon as
thing.
you brought that to the surface, I was like, that's a good shot. That's a good one.
You should have seen. I know I got sent you guys kind of like the blurry video when I was editing, but you should have seen Bear's face when I caught that smallmouth at Elmore. He made me nervous trying to reel that fish in. Like I
Yeah, I
set
could
the
picture.
hook.
Oh, dude.
The only thing that saved me with that fish is I had a moderate. I had my FX moderate, and I had a lot. It has a lot more bend to it,
Yeah,
And dude, I hit that thing, and it was one of those ones where you set it, and it's like you hit a wall. Like it just, I
yeah,
thought it was a pike. I really did. I thought it was a pike, and then it came up, but I felt it. I felt the rod start to unload, you know and I was like, oh man, I know this is whatever this is, it's coming up, right? So I dipped my rod, and right as I dipped my rod, I was focusing on getting my rod tipped down. I didn't realize the fish had already started to jump, and I heard from behind me, "Oh my god!" Like, and it just like it pulled me
that,
out of that like
yeah,
fish zone. I was like, "What's going on?" And then I realized, like, I saw, and the thing is it jumped like horizontally. It didn't come straight up. It like shamued. So it like covered like 2 feet of water and then went back in. And
yeah,
that's when I panicked because I heard him yell. It got
yeah.
me like out of my element. And then I ended up, and the thing is, it jumped again right next to the kayak. And then I got lucky and basically
Got it
stabbed the
in that.
net in and almost didn't
Yeah.
get it. The only reason, honestly, the rod itself and the way I hooked him, I actually got him under here. So I got one through his lip, and the back trebles of that square bill were up under his throat.
Oh, so he was
I had
he
a
was pinned
treble
pretty
in
good.
here, and then the other two outside ones were pinning his gills closed.
Yeah.
It was a bitch getting that hook out.
Oh, I bet. I would say
It was
they're a blessing and they're a bear at the same time because it's like, all right, they weren't coming out, but then you can't get them out after. It's like get one unhooked and the other ones bury themselves. It's
I trebles stress me out during tournaments because it's so like honestly, if he hadn't got that back treble, I wouldn't have got him because he was skin hooked in the mouth with one treble. The only reason I managed to land him was because he had that other hook on
right.
him. It was like
I know
almost like a
it's like
jerky
almost
hook.
get the snag at the end of it type of deal.
Yeah, it was crazy, dude. And then like we were just, but that's the thing though. Like I have to say, I'm loving the trail this year. What I like about it is the group. Like the lakes,
Yeah.
I've had success, so I don't really have a place to bitch because I've had a lot of success. But I also like if I was picking lakes next year, pretty much all of the lakes on this year's trail wouldn't be back. Maybe
Yeah.
Chitin and Rez, but
Yeah, I'd like to give
even
Chitin
that,
and Rez another try because I mean, outside of the win factor, I also kicked my own. I kicked my own butt there
yep.
quite a bit actually, and I knew it too. It was like I rolled around one corner and I saw not just one, but two, three good sized bass just stroll out from the bank, and I was like, as soon as I saw that, I was like, "Yep, you're an idiot. You're rolling too close to shore, and you spooked them out." It's just like
Dude, I don't.
it's just like
That's what baffles me about him is he pisses me off, and I hope you're watching this and you piss me off, but like
I saw him do
he
it at
gets
Elmore, and I was watching him. He was like on the bank.
I one of those I to be honest, one of those I told him to go in, but one of those I was like, dude, we need to get under that tree and see if there's something hanging out in there,
Mm-hmm.
but literally he will get like 1 foot on the fucking bank someday. Like he is like right next to the shore. but he likes to sight fish. Like he likes to see them. But I think that a lot of that comes from the fact that he predominantly was a bank fisherman. He
Yeah.
just bought a kayak last year. Like that was his first season in a kayak, and he didn't get to fish that much because he had a lot of stuff going on, and he basically comes down here to use his kayak because he doesn't use his kayak in Canada at all. So he didn't really use it as much. Like I think pretty much every time he used his kayak was with me last year. And so he's still getting used to being able to not be right on the bank because he's used to being able to cast from the bank, flip out, and catch
Right.
fish. So he's used to also being able to sight fish and see the fish because he's that close. And I think that's sometimes I do think it costs us. Like there's some places where I will pull in front of him and make sure that I fish an area before he comes through because he's going to scare the fish out when he goes in there. But at the same time, dude, he's so sneaky and stealthy the way he does it that I've watched him. Like he lost that fish out over towards the ramp in a grass flat. And no joke, dude, lost the fish. And I'm literally talking him down. He's like, dude, I can't believe I lost that fish. I'm so pissed. Like he's going through it. And then all of a sudden I heard him go, I got him back. And he literally was 3 feet from where he lost that fish. It wasn't the same fish, but he literally boated another fish after the commotion of catching a fish on a wacky rig, putting it in the net, losing the fish, being pissed off, then
Yeah.
getting back in position and casting again. And he was 2 feet off of the pads that he was casting into. He
Yep.
just, I call it he conjures the fish. Like there are so many times I've
Right.
come through and like been like, yeah, there's nothing here. We need to go. I've gotten to the point where I just accept, like we'll come to an area and I just accept that he's going in and I need to just hang out and wait for a few minutes because he somehow finds these fish that to me don't
Oh,
exist.
oh, for sure. Like actually, those Elmore is a prime example because you guys, we passed each other obviously several
Right.
times.
Yeah.
Um, but there's that one cove I hammered the crap out of with like everything. Because I
Good.
mean, as you know, Elmore was frustrating for everybody, so I was throwing lures I don't typically throw,
Yep.
and like I was throwing my go-to lures. Nothing. I drift down to the point where pre-fishing, I caught a bunch of fish in this one spot. You guys go by me, and then I don't know. I'm not sure what happened, but he was like trying to hand line a fish. It looked like from my angle, and I'm like, I
He
was
was.
just
He
there.
did. So, dude,
It's just like,
no shit. He literally. I hope he got on his camera because all I got was like a little bit of like his in the background. So he was retying and he threw it in the water because he was actually talking to me and he goes, man, I don't know. He's like, he was casting. He's like, dude, there's a knot in my braid. And I was like, dude, you need to just cut that out. Like, you need to cut
yeah,
that shit off and retie it because we're going to get a big fish. And at that point, we weren't aware that everybody wasn't having a good day. Like, in my mind, everybody's got 80. Like, that's just how my brain operates is everybody's got 80. Like, it's just my mentality because I've had too many tournaments where I took my foot off the gas and then lost by a few inches because I didn't keep fishing hard. And so I'm like, dude, you need to just cut that fucking knot out because it will break. If a big one pulls and that knot gets tighter, it's going to break that braid. So he threw the freaking wacky rig. He didn't even cast it. He threw it just to get the line away from him so he could pull line out of his reel to cut it. And a fucking bass bit it.
oh,
And he's like, dude, a bass just bit this. I don't know what to do. And then he just starts hand lining this bass. He had a bass on it.
yeah, I saw it, and I
And
was
then
so
it
mad.
bit the
I
hook
had to look
because he
away. I
couldn't
was like,
keep
"There's no way
attention.
that just happened." It's just like,
And he just looked at me like, how does this shit happen? And I'm like, dude, it's just like a weird. When me and him get together, dude, it's always chaos. Like one day we were on Waterbury Reservoir, dude. And we had a fucking seaplane land in the lake behind us. Just right. And what was
just
creepy about it is then people showed up in a boat and got on it and left like it was some sort of weird airport.
it's a little pickup drop off point.
Yeah, like I'm like, did we just watch like human trafficking or was this like a legitimate like thing? I don't really know what's going on. Like we've had, dude, we almost sank my boat on Echo.
Really? Oh, your
We
your
went to
bass
my
boat?
bass boat. Yeah,
Yeah.
we went to Seymour and we caught. So we went to Seymour. That was a ridiculous day. Anyways, we went to Seymour. The first fish he catches is a smallmouth on that fucking jig rod, which I'm so glad is at the bottom of Chittenden Res. Um, he loves that rod. He catches so many fish on it, and it's frustrating because he was so good with it, but he like would lose fish too because he's trying to hold this thing like six
Yeah,
feet in
way
the
above
air
his
to get
head.
enough tension on it to get the line out. But he literally hooked a smallmouth with an ice fishing tube and a freaking jig rod. So we literally were out of the ramp and just hanging out, and I was like getting stuff ready to start powering to go to the other side to fish. So then he does that, and then literally right after that, he pulls out a jerkbait and catches a fucking landlock on a jerkbait. And I'm like, why was a salmon in 6 feet of water over submerging grass hanging out with smallmouth? But
Right.
and then we pulled out of there. We fished half the day and we went over to Echo. And I launched the boat at Echo and I didn't put the fucking plug in. I was just tired, wasn't paying attention. And the reason we figured it out was because I had my auto inflate on my seat and it blew up because
Oh,
it got wet.
jeez.
So it scared the
Yep.
shit out of me. And I turned around and looked and the water was level with the deck of my boat,
Yep.
which is 2.5 feet of water. And I don't have an auto bilge. So I had to turn on the manual bilge. And we were in such shallow water, I couldn't even turn on the big motor because I couldn't get it down in the water enough. So I had a trolling motor back to shore while the bilge is just blasting water out of it, hoping that it had enough power to get the water out of the motor.
Oh,
And
jeez.
then literally pulled it up on the trailer. We had to manually basically push it onto the trailer, pull it out of the water so it could drain, and then we fish the rest of the day because we're stupid and that's not going to end our day. But
Right.
that's the
Yeah,
kind of
you
shit
got a
that
story
happens
though, right?
all with that's the thing. So we have, and I'm probably going to jinx it, but we have never had both of us not catch a fish every single time we have fished together. Not once. At least one of us has blanked, but never both of us have blanked
Yeah,
the
and I
entire
was
time.
gonna say that's benefited you guys this year for sure. Because I know you
Dude, so he
struggled.
has carried my ass. That's why I'm wearing his hat. He has carried my ass for the last two tournaments. Before Sunday's tournament, um, I would have been last place. Like without him as my teammate this year, I would have been probably just ahead of you. Because
Yep.
like Chin and Rez, I only caught two fish, and before that, Shelburne Pond, I only got one. Well, two, but one he called. So I guess technically it would be two because he was there.
Yep.
So but I really hope, and that's actually honestly my fear, is that we're gonna like lose a bunch of people next year. Like I have a feeling some of the guys might not return or might not decide to do the trail next year, but I hope we pick up enough that we can keep at least like 8 to 10. Like it's not, I don't necessarily want to have like a 20 team trail where we're limited to what lakes we can fish either.
Right. I was gonna say Vermont. I don't think we'd be able to sustain that unless we were fishing different bays in Champlain, which
We would
is
have to
tough
fish
with the
like
weather.
Converse Bay, we would have to fish like St. Catherine, we'd have to
Yeah, and
bomb
then
it.
it'd
We'd have
all
to do
be
like
you'd have to
some
have backup spots because you know small
yeah.
vessels and any type of wind and waves. You're
Well, I was gonna talk to Pete about that too because there is options. Like you could do there's a lot of like little places like for instance like up on 100 like you could go do like what we call road runner. We used to do them in Massachusetts. So you could do like Woodard and Echo and Rescue. Like you could do like everything on this road. You can fish it and then you just meet at one ramp. And that's actually a way a lot of trails will do, like it's like a cheat code thing. So you get a permit for one lake, but technically you're not fishing, everybody's not fishing that lake.
right.
So you have a permit to hold an event at Woodard, but you can fish Echo, Rescue, even Camp Pond if you really wanted to go that far. You
Right.
can
It's like
kind of
you have a
fish all
home lake
five
and
of
then you
those
have
lakes.
these other lakes that you
And
can.
then basically what happens is you just have to report back to the ramp at 3 o'clock and submit your fish, but you basically go pick, but you have to stay at whatever lake you pick. So the way we do it is like you would pick before the tournament even starts, I'm fishing here and you're fishing there. And like basically everybody, you know, I'm telling you though that, yeah, this is Scott Vermonter is one of my regulars. I'm coming down to Somerset. I'm actually debating on coming down to Somerset this weekend, Scott, but Somerset, have you ever seen Somerset Reservoir?
No.
Dude, it's fucking huge. I never heard of it. But I fished it once with Bobby Roast Beef. We went down there, but we went down there in like March and it was fucking snowing. And I was like, nah, this isn't gonna work. But dude, it's a big, huge, it kind of reminds me a lot of Chitin and Res, but bigger. Um, and it's got multi-species, but what's cool about it is it's all state land, and there's like actual like places where you can just set up and camp. Like there's no like fees, or like you just go show up, and there's already like pre-established sites everywhere, and then you could just like go primitive camp or whatever. So a lot of people go up there and just camp and hang out for the weekend, but it's like one of the last few places that you don't have to like pay to go camping.
Right.
So I'm actually trying to get my boy Bobby Roast Beef to take the boat out there because he's got that 17-foot lund. So I kind of want to just go out there in a boat because then I don't have to pedal around all day. But
Right. Kind of cover some ground. Get to know the
yeah,
area.
dude, I love my kayak, and I really want. That's one of the reasons why I want to upgrade next year. Is I want to eventually add a motor, just because there's some days where, well, like you get to the end of a tournament, and like a lot of times everybody like hangs out around the ramp because they don't want to have to pedal all the way back at the end, But it's like if I had a motor, I feel like I could get to part of it. I actually think would hurt me though, because I think I would move around too much.
Yep.
Because I can. Whereas with the pedal drive, I'm kind of like, wow, maybe we should stay here a little longer and fish this a little bit more because I don't want to have to lose 10 minutes to go pedal here or 15 minutes to go pedal there. And with you, it's even worse because
No, I know. It's like
my
I really
my
have to
15
calculate
minute
that.
pedal is your 30-minute paddle. So
I mean, Elmore was easy because I was like, I can paddle across Elmore in 5 minutes, so it wasn't
right,
really a big deal because I pond hopped, as you probably saw, like
yeah,
3 or 4 times by the end of the day because I was
yeah.
getting super frustrated. I was like, nothing's biting. Everybody I'm talking to, nothing's biting. I actually saw Brian just lazily cruising behind me at one point with his motor
Yeah,
on.
dude,
It's like he's having a bad day. It's just like,
he didn't even have his forward facing sonar on his kayak. And dude, I saw him at one point. We came up behind him and we thought he was heading to like an area that we were heading to, but he was just like driving in a straight, like I think he was just graphing, but he was just like driving in a straight line, and he went by that like farthest point and he just kind of kept going towards the beach and he just kept driving, and I'm like, what the fuck is he doing? Like he wasn't casting, he wasn't reeling, he was just looking down. So I'm like, he must be like graphing or trying to find something. And it was weird because I'm like, usually he's like, every time I've seen him, normally he's like flipping pitching like
oh yeah,
all day, like he's constantly throwing something, and then like he just wasn't. But that's the thing, dude. That's the one thing I
indoor.
think is going to be the equalizer, though, is the next two tournaments. I think there's going to be some shakeups because I've never fished Magog and I don't know enough about it. And from what I found, it's hard to actually find info on that place. Like you can't really find a depth chart. You can find videos and stuff, but I only trust that a little bit because you never really know whether they're telling the truth
Right.
about what they're using, unless you
Well,
see them
that and
actually
the
bait.
Vermont weather, man, has just not been to our benefit this year either. It's
Yeah.
like we've been getting pounded so hard with rain, and then you get the humidity, the heat, and then it comes right back down like this morning. And I was like,
Yeah.
man, if I had the day off, I'd be out topwater fishing right now because it's like 50 degrees.
Yep.
It's like,
Yeah.
and then
It sucks, dude. It's been frustrating for me because the forecast has almost always been wrong for tournaments too. So like I go in like because I tie the night before and I have like the
yep,
first round of everything tied on, and I have a strategy like a plan, right? But then like obviously everything goes to shit pretty quickly. But the thing is like the weather has not only been unpredictable on the day of, but it's like it seems like every time we're about to do a tournament, we get like a flood or big
yep,
rain or big windstorm or something, and it just changes. Like before we went to Miles, there was a
yeah,
tree that I had caught fish on every single time I went there, and that tree was pushed up against the bank because of all the flooding, and I got screwed on that deal. So like that's something that like Magog is going to be. I'm worried about with the size of that, like that we're gonna get a bad storm. Like
yeah. We
we
gotta,
all get up there and then find out that we can't fish it or it's rough or we're gonna have to really deal with.
But we got to
weather.
figure out too, like how far we can go, because that's, I mean,
Yeah,
that's a pretty
I
big
don't know.
body of water. Like, and everyone's talked about, oh, if you can sneak underneath the bridges, and it's like, I'm not laying down 6 to 8 rods and trying, because I've done that before, like
Sucks.
just doing like a
Yep.
normal day of fishing, and I had probably the worst time. I actually packed it in because I ended up tangling 2 of my rods together. I had line wrapped around the tip, and I was like, you know what? I'm done. Like, I was fishing a new place, and then I went underneath the bridge, and I was like, I don't know why I bothered. It's just like
Yeah.
now it's just like a giant mess, and it's just like I don't know.
So Michael Bradley asks a good question. So yes and no. So I don't actually know the rules on this. There is some tournament trails in kayak tournaments that you can't get on shore. Once you're in the water and once you've launched, you can't go back to shore unless you have an emergency. Now I have at any given time probably 3 rods in my truck. That's just simply because I travel with them in case I want to change shit up when I get to a ramp when I'm fun fishing, and I just kind of have them ready to go. But to give you a perspective, Michael Bradley, I run 10 rods anyways in my kayak. So having to have extra rods to rig up doesn't really benefit me much because I have literally medium heavy moderate, a medium, 2 medium heavy fast, actually 3 medium heavy fast. I usually have 2 spinning rods. Like I have every possible combination of rod. So it's really just a matter of cutting and tying on another bait than it is going and getting another rod. And that's
Yeah.
again, it's really weird because like Bear carries basically 2 spinning rods.
Well, I mean, you've seen what I bring. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah,
and
you're
I
loaded
and
up
I,
like I am. Like
and I
it's
use like 3 to 4 of them during the day. But at the same
yeah,
time, though, I mean, I don't. I've had days like I had one where the line I had just kept snapping off, and it
yeah,
was like it wasn't just snapping off big ones. It was like I'm catching a 12 incher and it's breaking off, and I'm like throwing that rod back, pick up another one,
yeah.
throw on that same lure and just carry on with the day. So it has its benefits, but yeah, I bring
I think
more than I
sometimes, dude.
need.
So I've downsized. Like I used to carry 12, but I downsized. I actually like 8 is really the number, and I run 9 in a tournament. But the ninth rod is just that bonus spinning rod that's just already rigged. But see what I do. My strategy shouldn't tell this because he's right here. But my strategy for a tournament is I have like a swim jig in case I run into grass. I'll have like some sort of crankbait, whether it's a lipless or a square bill, something like that. And then so I can kind of cover that like top half, like that 5 foot section. I'll
Yep.
have a jig, like a football jig that I can drag bottom with. So I have one bait to cover, and then when I start the day, I'll usually have a spook, a frog, some sort of top water. So basically, I literally have a bottom contact bait, I have a middle column bait, I have a finesse bait, I have a top water bait. I have all those rods ready to
Yep.
go so that whatever I find in the morning is where I then capitalize. So like if I find that like okay, yeah, they're definitely not hitting top water, that gets cut off and then I swap it to whatever I feel at the moment. But I also travel with, which is again why I've been kind of hinting I'm looking at a new kayak next year is I run 63700 boxes for just plastic or just hard baits. Like
Yeah.
I have a box for jerk baits and liplesses. I have a box for square bills of every possible size. I have
Yep.
a box of big swim baits. I have actually 2 little boxes of jigs where I have football jigs, pitching jigs, every freaking size and dimension up to like a 3/4 ounce. I don't really go ounce because I never really
Yeah.
understood why you would throw a one. I might as well throw a rock at the bass because they're going to keep it coming.
Right.
That's what I mean. Like I have everything covered, and then what I will do is I will just detail. Like you, I do. You do the kind of the same thing. Like when we fished at Fairfield, like I'll throw a square bill and I'll start out with like a perch color. The perch color doesn't work, I'll throw a bluegill color. If the bluegill color doesn't work, I'll switch to. That's how I caught that smallmouth. Was I literally had a different bait tied on there, but it was windy. The water clarity was fucking awful.
Mm-hmm.
That was probably one
Yeah.
of the that after Shelburne Pond, that was probably the nastiest water we'd fished
And
this
it
year.
was really weird too, because I don't know if you noticed it, but I also noticed the clarity on one side.
It was different than the other, yeah.
Yeah, and it
Big
was
time.
like there's no, it doesn't flow anywhere. It didn't really make sense. It's like, why
Yeah.
is it clear over here, and then you go to the other side, it's like a swamp, you
Yep.
know?
Yeah, it
So
was wicked muddy. And it was so I ended up throwing on that square bill, and that square bill is chartreuse belly. And it has like a huge, like, I swear to God, it must have like a freaking like half, like quarter size, like knocker in it, because it's like tick, 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 tick. Like when you freaking shake it, it's like
really
it's the
loud.
loudest bait
Yeah,
I have. But I was like, you know what? The wind's blowing. There's no visibility. I'm just gonna throw this out and see if I can draw some. Because my plan wasn't even necessarily, obviously, it's to catch fish. But what I'll do sometimes is while he's fishing shallow, so like he'll be here fishing shallow, I'll go out deep
or offset.
and
Yeah,
45 the bank and throw something loud and draw it back to the bank. Because in my mind, even if they aren't going to bite it, they may follow the sound and then go attach
yeah,
to something.
chase it. Yep, with a follow
And
up
I've
bait.
had that happen. I've gone up and down a bank before with a loud bait and then gone back through that same, shore and had fish right on cover. And I don't know whether I drew them there or if it was just shit luck, but I do feel like if you basically are throwing up a flare and
Yeah,
those fish come to investigate it and then they're like, oh, look, a rock pile. I'm going to hang out here for a minute. And then bear comes through doing whatever the fuck he does with a
hmm,
wacky rig that he catches.
I
He
know.
does it. You ever seen him fish a wacky rig?
Well, I haven't watched him, but I tell you the one thing that I will say that the disadvantage to not having a teammate is because I've been the guy behind the other guy catching fish, and he's like, "Dude, what the hell?" And I was just like, "You're just stirring them up for me. That's all it is." And it's so true because you can go in there and you can bombard the crap out of an area, and
Yep.
they don't care. And then as soon as they get like 30 seconds of calm, and then you come in there, and they're just like, you
Yep.
know, they snap on it. And it was like it was frustrating at Elmore because I was behind someone else, and then Kent and Mike were behind me, and I was like,
Yep.
I don't want. I was like, I'm not trying to stir up the fish for them. So I was like, I was
Yep.
watching them pretty close, and then I ended up actually drifting out because I turned my graph on and I was fishing a trench because I was like, you know what, they can bank fish, nothing's hitting it. I'm gonna fish
Yep.
this little trench here because I was marking stuff, but obviously with
The bank
the
really
Game
wasn't.
Boy that I have, you can't see what they are.
No,
So
dude, and the bank wasn't really all that productive, honestly. It was weird because we didn't catch a fish. We got a fish. We got that smallmouth fairly early, but that was on a crankbait. That wasn't on a finesse bite. We
yeah,
didn't get our first finesse fish. We fished from that point all the way down almost to the beach. Didn't get a bite at all. And then I got that one smallmouth down there on the crankbait. We worked all the way back, almost all the way to the access. We actually got almost all the way back to where we met up with you, where you caught that log,
yep,
before we got our first finesse fish. And we were like, and when he fishes finesse, there's no stone left unturned. Like that dude is pitching to every little piece of grass. And I just kind of hang out and fish behind him. And then I fish, reaction. But like, the finesse bite wasn't there until it was. And I don't know what caused them to go to the bank. I don't know if it was the pressure of all of us basically running the
right,
same stretch of bank for an hour and a half. But like it wasn't there. And then all of a sudden it was. But the way if you watch his videos, it's funny because he doesn't like, I dead stick my finesse baits. I basically skip a wacky rig in there and I just wait.
yep.
He literally was like popping it like a jerk bait.
Which can work. I mean, I've done it that way, and I usually do that when I start to get bored, honestly. Because I mean,
Yeah.
wacky worms do take some patience because
Yeah.
90% of your catches are either going to be on the fall when you plop them in there, which is why I think Neds are great because I've
Yep.
always called those the poor man's fish finder because you can drop those in and you can tell if there's bait fish there because they'll, they'll hit it a few times, but they won't actually take it. And I mean, it's the same things for the wacky worms, really.
So yeah, the thing is, dude, what's weird is this year. So wacky rig has always been like my go to. Like the first few bass I ever caught were on a wacky rig worm. Like it's just something. And I, what's funny is, dude, I didn't know how I was supposed to rig a worm I didn't know that that was a rigging technique when I started fishing. I
Just
was
hooked
hooking
it.
my brother was fishing with me, and he had looked up and done some research into bass fishing. I was a trout and salmon guy, and I didn't really do bass fishing. And he was telling me that he was catching fish on a worm, and he gave me a pack of worms. And I only had EWG hooks, and I was Texas rigging. I was wacky rigging on a fucking 4/0 EWG hook in grass,
Yep.
and it was working. But I didn't even know I was wacky rigging. I was just hooking it like you hook an earthworm to a
Right.
fucking hook. Like I didn't know you were supposed to thread it on and text pose it and all that. I had no idea that was a thing. Like I was just hooking it. I was like, oh, it's like a night crawler.
Yeah.
I hooked it and casted it. And that became a bait that I just became confident in. And you can skip a wacky rig a lot easier. Like that's one of the best
Yeah.
skipping baits on the planet. But um I normally this time of year switch exclusively to the net. And I can't say that. In the last year and a half, I have learned how to fish a net and I use that. I haven't caught a fish in a net all year.
So
Not
that's
one.
yeah. This year's been a weird year for me. So usually, like last year, like top water was like it didn't matter what time of day, what time of year. Like
Yeah.
I had the double XPS, the double plopper.
Yep.
I tried those out last year, and those were murdering everything. Like between
Yep.
largemouth bass, smallmouth bass, it didn't matter where I threw them. And then I tried them this year, nothing,
I, I haven't got
nothing.
anything. The only thing I've got, so top water, obviously hollowbelly frog, but that, I mean, you can't really, I mean, where I fish, you know where I fish, like
Yeah.
pads and bullfrogs. They're going to
Well, I was
hit
gonna
that.
say that one little trail that is now there is
Yep.
just loaded. So
Yep. So you do that, right? But I've caught all the rest of my top water fish on like a spook, which I've never used to use. I couldn't get a Chopo. I used to use a Chopo, like the 90 size Chopo, and I would just destroy and I would catch pike and everything on it. And I haven't caught a fish on that this year either. It's this year has been a weird year. And I think part of it comes down to also though is a confidence thing. So I've had a lot of success with the swim jig. I've had a lot of success with the wacky rig. So like, and normally it's the Kitech Easy Shiner on a billy weighted hook that I always say in every one of my
mhm.
freaking.
Yep.
I have not. I other than Fairfield, I haven't caught any fish on the Kitech either. And I had a Kitech on at Elmore, and I threw that for an hour
Yeah.
and I didn't catch anything on it. Like I think that situation was the water clarity was just so shit that they weren't gonna find that small bait
Yeah. There was
at water. There was no way they're
they
gonna
couldn't
see it.
see anything. Like I even threw like I had a black and blue chatterbait on at one point. So I was just like, you know what? And
Yep.
I was like, there I got nothing to lose at this point. And I was just skipping it through the weeds and you know even
Dude,
giving
I've
it some
yo-yo
pauses and ripping it.
chatterbait, dude. One of the best things a lot of people don't do is you take a chatterbait and you cast it up against a weed edge and just yo-yo it
Yeah.
because it'll
Yeah.
vibrate and like be
And then
erratic.
fall down and then yeah, I was doing that mainly because I was just like nothing else is working, so might as well
Yep.
try something new. And it was just like
Dude, and that's the thing is like I feel like almost feel guilty when we get to the weigh-in because like it's like Jason was sitting there measuring stuff and they were talking and they're like, how'd you do? And I'm like 87. And they're like, fuck you. And I'm like, what do you mean fuck me? Like I'm like that I didn't do that. I'd have thought I got my ass kicked. Like I thought we were like third, maybe. Like I didn't think we were last, but I didn't think like I mean I had a 19 and a half to start the day, so I knew we were gonna be okay. But like I thought we were not I thought we needed 90 to win.
yeah. Well, I mean, my first day pre-fishing it, I had almost 80 and
Yeah.
my hopes were pretty high. And then I went the second time, probably 2 weeks before the tournament, and I had a very similar day as the Sunday where I caught one fish, but it was after tournament hours. So I didn't really count it.
Yep.
But I was just like, this is going to be another Miles Pond.
Yeah,
And I
dude, I
mean,
caught a
even Chris said the same thing. It's so small with so many anglers. It's just like,
it's that's what it is. It's and that's the problem is, dude, there isn't a lot of places. Somerset would actually be a good place. We should talk to Pete about that. It's a fucking haul for you guys. Because it's down like Bennington side.
I mean, I've been driving all over the place already, so
That's true. Somerset would be plenty big enough to do an event. You've got there's a lot of lakes. Like I think we should definitely do Maury. Maury's plenty big enough where we wouldn't see each other all day. That's the thing about the last two events, dude. And it's not a problem for me because I've done enough of these where I know like how to crowd like because we had rules like I follow rules that we don't have because I had them ingrained into my head from other trails. Like there was like other tournaments you couldn't fish within 30 or 35 or 40 yards of another competitor. If you did, you'd
yeah.
be DQ. Like
What's
there
funny is
was no
that
like you didn't sneak up behind somebody and cast and start talking to them.
no,
That was not allowed. It was fucking strictly prohibited. And so, like, if I see someone fishing a bank or a point, I'm just going to go out and around you. Like, it's just my mentality. But, like, we've had to. Shelburne Pond, Miles, and Elmore, most of the fish I saw caught or caught myself were in 100-yard stretches.
yep,
That was it. There was just these two shorelines, 100 yards. That was where they were. And
yep,
we're all using the same. I mean, for the most part, we're all flipping baits or using a wacky rig or using a finesse bait or like a lot of us were using the same techniques. So like it was just a weird event.
whoever
That's why
gets
I'm
there
saying these
first.
next two are going to be different because Magog is fairly big. That is a big. It is
Yeah,
big and not big. If you can't get onto the overpass, it's going to be smaller than we think because it's only I measured it on Google Earth. It's like 2 miles from end to end. So it's big,
it's
but it's
bigger
narrow.
than where we've been the last two events.
But it's narrow. So it's still like, it's not as wide. But, and Bombazine's stupid big for compared to what we've been fishing.
Yeah,
And Bombazine's going to be interesting because there's a lot of ways to fish Bombazine, but also like it's going to be colder. It's going to be fall.
yep.
So we may hit the feed up stage or we may be too late and it's already done. And we're trying to pick
Yeah,
five.
October is a weird month because there's like you have a small window where they're really on fire, and then it'll die off pretty quick.
And Bombazine is one of those places that will frustrate people because they'll catch 10-incher, 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 12-incher, 10-incher, 10-incher, 14-incher. Like it's like a place that dude, I've never caught a fish over 6 inches there. I'm not exaggerating. I'm not sandbagging. That lake stresses me out. And I've gone there with the bass boat. I've gone there with the kayak. I've gone there with a rowboat. Like matter of fact, I'm debating on this weekend. My plan, the problem is the weather, is either to take the rowboat out to Bombazine just so I have a motor so I can fuck around and not have to pedal everywhere and just try to figure some shit out, or go down the Somerset with the kayak and just screw around down there. But like the problem with Bombazine is I don't know it well enough, and anytime I have fished it has been from the north end, from Float Bridge.
Yep.
And that green dump access is a mystery to me because I usually avoid it because I don't want to deal with people. And that access is packed this time of year. It's always
It's
wall
pretty
to
popular
wall.
on social media. I know I've seen it. I've heard that term quite a few times in the fishing community for
Well,
sure.
the problem
So
is it has a lot of really big smallmouth. That has a lot of. It's actually quality wise, it's a really good lake. I can't figure it out, and I don't know why. I should be able to. I think what it is, I'm not willing to put in the time. And then that's part of it. Is like I get there, I've gone there to fish there and been like, fuck this. I don't want to deal with people.
yeah,
Like I'll get there and there's already 10 boats there and I'm like, nah, I don't want to deal with it.
yep.
So that's my problem. And I need to just buckle down and just do it. And that's actually one of the reasons why I want a motor is for places like that. Because with a motor, it's a little different. You want to go fish over by the Route 30 side, you can get there. With this kayak tournament, like the island is one of the best places to fish. It's going to take a while to get to that island from
Yeah.
the green dump side. I mean, you're talking I mean, it takes me a few minutes with the bass boat at 30 miles an hour. Like it's a move. It's a move. But there's fish over there, but That's
Right.
the decisions you
You
got
got
to
to be
make.
able to get over there.
Yeah. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting end of the season. I did the math, and we are 35 inches ahead of Jason. But if we were to blank, that
That's
goes
the
away
thing.
real fast.
I thought about that today. I mean, you guys are you're pretty solid, but as we can as we can see, anything can happen. So I mean, the
Yeah, if we blank,
Williams, they started off super hot, and then the last two, man, I mean, holy crap. It's like that day at Miles, I met up with them. They're like, we haven't caught a fish all day. And I was like, you're kidding.
yeah,
I haven't caught a fish all day, but honestly, that's just how my season's been going.
right,
And they were just like, no, man. And then, like, 5 minutes after I ran into them, I caught that 17 and a half inch lethargic
yeah,
looking largemouth that actually
yeah.
put me ahead of them for the day. And I was just like,
Dude,
geez,
what's
rough.
frustrating too for me, and that's what's weird about, like, it sounds like an arrogance thing, right? But like I've a lot of the big fish, dude, we've caught, you've been right there, dude. Like Miles, the big fish we caught at Miles, you're literally on my fucking camera paddling behind me as Bear is reeling in that fish. Like, so you're not in the wrong area. And I'm not trying to like discourage you. I'm just trying to prove the point that you have the right plan. You're in the right area. And I know what bait you fish. It's the same fucking color that this fool does.
Yeah, pretty much.
So, so like it's not like you have the right bait and you're in the right area. A lot of times it's just literally shit luck. And that's the thing is we've just had a lot of really weird like luck situations. And that's why I'm expecting that we're gonna blank because we're due. We're due for a beatdown. We're due for karma to come back around on us, and I think it's going to be either Magog or Bombazine that's going to burn us. And the thing is, we're 35 inches ahead, but 35 inches. If we blank once, we still our lowest would be 80, right?
Yeah,
So they would have to get above 80 to gain on us, which you could probably do at Magog because from what I heard, there's some pretty good sized smallies in there and largies in there. But the fact is, if we blank again at Bombazine, then all they need to do is have a limit and they win.
yeah.
So it's not as far off as it sounds. 35 inches sounds like a lot, but all we've got to do is fail badly enough
I know.
where
That's why my position's like the best. It's like I have zero pressure
you know
whatsoever.
it's funny, dude. Though that's how. So I went into this turn. This is the first tournament. Granted, I had a lot of shit going on at Chittenden and Res, but like, and Miles, I was actually aggravated. But me and Bear were fighting at one point. Like we weren't really like yelling at each other, but we were like very disagreeing on what we wanted to do next.
Yeah, I was gonna say when
And
I cruised by you that one time, I could tell Bear was all smiles, and you looked like you were getting ready to rip someone's head off.
so I am too competitive. That's my problem. Is I am extremely hyper competitive, and it's in a way that people don't realize. It is literally not anything to do with you, my competitors. Like my opponents, I I always joke like you're dead to me until the event's over. But at the same time, like I'm not necessarily competitive against you guys as much as I am myself. If I make a mistake or I make a bad decision, and with those last two events, I was quote unquote in charge. I did the scouting. I had experience on the lakes. I mean, Miles not as much, but I'd gone there. Bear had never seen it until we fished it. So like I had done all of the practice. I made the game plan. I had the strategy down. I kind of picked out what baits I think were going to work. I had done all that work and I didn't in my mind contribute until like Miles right up until the end. I really didn't have a fish that was useful. So then, like, in Chin and Res, I literally didn't enter any of the fish I entered. Didn't got called by Bear.
Yeah,
So literally, like, Matt called all my fish. So like, I wasn't really there in my mind. Now, granted, that was a fucked up month
yeah.
because
That was a rough
dog
month
and
for you.
everything
So
else too, and COVID and a dog that I ended up putting down 2 weeks later. But like, that's still the way my brain works, my hyper competitiveness. That isn't an excuse. Like I was like that all through high school. I've always been like that when it comes to competition. Like I was even at the end of Elmore, I was like, we need to get a bigger fish. We need to get a bigger fish. But I was having fun. And the difference was I told Bear he was in charge. I'm like, I'm not doing the game. You're telling us what we're gonna do. And I kept like pushing that. I was like, okay, what do you want to do next? And like it took the pressure off of me, but I think that's made it harder for him because he
Right.
was assuming that pressure, and I don't think we probably won't do that at Magog only because he hated like me asking him, okay, what are we doing next? I'm following you. Like I partially was joking. Like we obviously like that's I think one thing that if you can find a teammate next year, it would be beneficial simply because that ability to check yourself. Because my habit in a tournament is to run and gun. I'm not good at small ball. I'm not good at casting to the same fucking tree for 20 minutes. That's not what I do. Bear
Yeah.
slows me down, but that's been good because, like that smallmouth, I wouldn't have caught that because I would have already been down and back by the time I would have casted to that smallmouth. A lot of the times, what he'll do is he'll go in and tuck himself in and start screwing around on a rock or some sort of grass or something. Oh, I've got to go fish this, is the wording he gives. I've got to go. And
Yeah.
I'm like, okay. So then I will pull out and just start fan casting a lipless or crankbait or something. And every once in a while it works out and we'll catch a fish. But like without him, I would have probably done 4 or 5 laps around that lake on Sunday because I don't do well with just hanging out. I fish, I leave, I fish, I leave, I fish, I leave, and I move around. And it burns me in a tournament because I need to just get fish. I always like have this like head hunting mentality. So having that teammate to like slow you down and then, like we were talking about when we caught his bigger fish, when we caught actually 3 of the fish we caught were because we were like, do we want to go across and just go fish the other shoreline where all the docks are, where the Williams guys were the whole day? I was like, do we want to go over there because we've made it all the way back here and we haven't caught anything? We've only got the one fish on the board. What do we do? And he's like, no, I got to fish this first. And then he caught a fish. And
Yeah.
then he lost that fish because he let it go. But then, like, he got another one. So then we got 2 on that same grass flat. And I was like, okay, now we need to. There's obviously something happening here. There's schooling or something's going on. But that's what I mean. Like, if I was by myself, dude, I would have fucking booted it to the other
Yeah.
shoreline.
Yeah. I was gonna say that win helped me out in that sense because I mean, Ken and Mike were right behind me with their trolling motor, but I was down the lake in just over an hour and a half.
Yep.
And the first time I pre-fished it, it took me 3 hours to
Yep.
go up that side. And I
Yep.
was just letting the wind kind of troll me up. But I was like, it's a little different. Like you said, like when you're in the tournament, you feel you got to get there.
There's a clock.
You got to, because
And
I said that in like one of my opening videos. I was like, if we can get on something early, because with how many people are here, that'll be key. And I mean, obviously, it didn't work out. And I was actually surprised because I know there's a lot of people that like to pitch and flip docks.
yep.
And I was almost certain that everybody was going to jet to the right side of the lake.
That's what I
And I
thought
was
too.
very surprised when I was going up to,
Yep.
I got to my spot and I turned around and there was like 4 boats behind me. And I was like,
Dude, it was that. So literally what I said was Kent's going to go do docks. Pete's going to fish the access area where the grass is. Jason's going to start out in the middle somewhere, probably drop shotting. Brian's going to probably go fish the same shore we were. And I thought that the Williams boys were going to go where we were. They went down on the dam side.
yeah,
And that's why normally in a tournament, and again, this is where the teammate thing, like bringing that back in, but like literally that's where the first time, normally we fish, I find something close to the ramp. Always do that because I wanted to start fishing right off, even if it's just to get a couple 12 inches, just to get something on the board. Because there's just like this pressure that relieves when you get that one fish. Your brain slows down. You don't feel like you're running on redlining the whole time if you have that first fish. So I had success. So the first time me and Bear fished there, we caught fish on that point that we were down on. We went to initially. I caught 2 fish on that same point the weekend before. So I was like, well, there's obviously a reason there's fish here. So we just booted it down there, but we got about halfway there and almost didn't fish down there right off because no one followed us. I thought for sure a bunch of them were going to fly down to the other side of the lake, and no one, a lot of guys were fishing right next to the ramp right off.
Yeah.
And we literally were surprised. We were so surprised that we almost changed the game plan. I'm glad we didn't, because I think that set the stage for us when we caught that one big one. It kind of got us amped up, but that's the thing that's kind of cool about, that's why I really hope that the trail stays together, because the one thing that I like is that it's not a like some places I've fished tournaments, it's like the guys are done and they're just going home, and guys didn't even stay for the weigh-in, guys didn't care. In our group, we're literally messaging, we're half of us are texting, we're not even home yet and we're already talking in the
Yep.
group.
Yep.
It's like a good group of friends that met up at a lake to fish more than a tournament trail, and I mean, we're taking each other's money, so there's still that little bit of animosity built in, but there's not like a hatred or like a oh well, I'm not going to go anymore because I'm always losing. You're literally the perfect example. You're literally in last place, and it's not a slight, it's just that's where you are, and you're just like, now I can just go fish.
Yeah.
That's a cool mentality to have, is oh, I literally can't win AOI, so I'm going to try to see it. But that's the thing cool too, is you could technically still win a tournament. It doesn't matter that you're
Right.
not going to win AOI. You still could get in the money.
Right. Still
And
put
let's
something
be honest,
together
the
and
money,
yeah.
Again, it sounds like I'm bragging, but it's not like the money is Bear literally used the money I handed him from the tournament to cover his gas to get back and forth to Canada. You're not
No, you're
really
not raking
making
in thousands of dollars here.
yeah,
So
you're not gonna really like make a profit, because at the end of the day, the $50 membership and the $55 entry fee, and then the gas to get to Elmore for me is a tank of gas. So before I even started fishing, I had $100 into that tournament
right.
before I even cast.
And then if you break a rod or
Break a
lose
rod or lose
equipment,
a
it's
bait,
like buy
whatever.
new baits. Like after Fairfield Pond, I had to buy, well, yeah, I had to buy a bunch of new worms because I just kept losing them to small fish.
Dude,
So, I mean,
I broke a rod at every tournament except for Elmore this year.
Yep.
Every me or Bear Fishing broke or lost a rod at every fucking tournament until Elmore.
Yeah, and that's
So
expensive.
yeah, I've broken 3-4 rods this year. Granted, I replaced them with FX rods, so I got better upgrades. But I could have not had to. I actually got that rod I borrowed from Chris at Fairfield.
Yep.
That came yesterday. I
Nice.
bought one of those little short ones.
Yep.
Those are kind of sneaky. The 6'3". They're such a sneaky little rod because they're so short. You can do so much shit with them.
Right. A little bit more accuracy and
It's just
get them in tighter
granted, the
places.
casting distance sucks. You're not gonna be able to bomb cast something because it's so short. You don't get that leverage. But it definitely it's fun for jerk baits, top waters, little tiny baits. You can kind of feel everything because it's so short.
Right.
But
Now, like
dude,
you
we've
said
been
earlier,
going
though, it'd
for.
be cool to get everybody back together, or at least mostly everybody. I mean,
I'm
maybe some
hoping so.
new
I'm gonna
people.
talk to Pete about possibly doing an ice fishing derb too. Try to do one once we get safe ice. I don't want to try to do a risky one or there's 3 inches of ice somewhere or something. But it'd be kind of cool to see if we could get an ice Carmi or something and try to do an ice fishing derby out of the state, the campground access.
Yep.
And just do a measurement just for fun. Even if we don't have money on it, just meet up and
Yeah, just go hang out. Pretty much. Yeah.
So I'm hoping that the group stays together. I'm pretty sure Chris will, but he seemed pretty pissed at the last tournament. I'm not gonna
Well,
lie.
so, I know his mentality at the end of the day, it's kind of been how mine, it does get in your head, right? You go out, you're competing, and like you said, it's like you're not just competing against other anglers, you're competing against yourself. And it's like,
Yep.
now you're thinking to yourself, am I really as good as I think I am,
Is it
or
worth
it's just like it is a little bit of a mind game. But the way I look at it is, every tournament I have struggled, there's been multiple other people that are struggling as well. So it's not
it?
like I'm the only one
No.
not catching fish. Like, there's been plenty of other people not catching fish, and if they're not catching fish, like you said, their teammate is kind of saving them.
Yep.
So it's it's what's kept me in it, really, because it's like, it is kind of like a little mind fuck, when
Yep.
you're out there.
Well,
It's just like, man, what am I doing? It's like
dude,
before, when I
I had
wasn't
that
finishing a
happen.
tournament, I could catch fish all day long, it seemed like.
Dude, when I went to Massachusetts, dude, I threw a fucking temper tantrum after my second blank. I blanked once, was pissed, but I went to the weigh-in. Everybody encouraged me, whatever. I pre-fished the shit out of the lake the second time I blanked. I went down there the weekend before. I fished the shit out of it. I was like, okay, I got a pretty good idea what this place is about. Didn't catch a bluegill. Didn't catch not a fish the whole tournament. And keep in mind, this is a place where I was driving 3 hours to get to a 5:30 captain's meeting. And we had to be there at 5:30, or you weren't. You had to be like,
Right.
basically your kayak needed to be in the water at 5:30, because once the captain's meeting was over, you launched. So
Yeah, after
like,
home. So you're up at
yeah,
like 2 in the morning.
dude, I was literally working remote on, it was Saturdays too. So I had to like I was working remote, and I would get done work at 5 o'clock and go to bed. Like, I literally was done work at 5 o'clock and I would go to bed, and then get up at 2 and leave.
Yeah. And then all
And
that time just to put
and
nothing on
then
the
didn't
board,
catch
man.
a fish, and I was pissed. I threw a temper tantrum. I literally, I texted the group and I was like, guys, I'm going home. I got 3 hour drive. I didn't catch a fish. I blanked. I'm heading home. But I was really like, I was all the way home. I was like, I'm done. I'm done tournaments. I'm not doing this shit anymore. It's not worth the money. It's not worth the effort. But I want back the next event. I ended up going back and I took third and got in the money. And it was just like, it's a weird mentality, because this year, dude, it's really weird to say, because I've never won fucking anything in my life. Never won in a high school, like even high school sports, dude. My high school baseball team had like a 5 year losing streak going. We didn't win very many games. Like, I won a few. So even when I ran a co-ed beer gut softball league, like the best we ever did is like place like third in the state tournament. But like, I never won, like actually won an event ever. Anything. Beer pong, fucking anything. Like nothing. And this year, it's like all the chips have just like fallen in place for us. But like, that's why I keep saying, like, Magog's gonna, like, we're one of these tournaments, we're gonna get boned. Like, it's just coming. I can feel it. But like, that's what tournament fishing is, and that's what's cool about it, is like, we do have a group of guys that I think have the right mentality. That, like, if you're there to make money, you're kidding yourself. Like, you're gonna lose. Like, I have more money invested this year because of tournaments than I could possibly make back,
Oh, for sure.
because I
I was
bought
gonna say,
better
before I even
rods, I
started.
bought better baits, I bought specific baits for Elmore. I bought specific baits for each body of water that I felt like were going to be effective. I spent extra money on them, and at the end of the day, for me, it's about the content. It's about making videos for the guys in the chat right now that are hanging out with us, that want to see how the event played out and how things happen, and the weird drama of me losing rods and breaking shit and
Right.
catching freaking trees and all that dumb shit that happens. So that's what it's about for me, and it's about like trying to build a group of people that's like I said, like, you're going to fish a lake, and I'm like, hey, let me know how it goes, because I'm thinking about possibly fishing there this weekend. Like, having that group of people to fish with is better, because this time of year, I'll admit, like, I get burned out. Like, I'm making a lot of videos and a lot of content, but I also sometimes feel obligated to go fishing because I need to make a video.
Right.
And like, having someone to fish with makes it more fun, because then you're just kind of shooting the shit and hanging out with your buddies, instead of like, oh, I've got to figure out how to catch, a 5 pounder or do something significant. Otherwise, it's just a video of me
Right. Just you.
casting and catching
Yeah.
12 inches, and no one's really going to watch that. So,
Yeah. No, I'm hoping. Like I said, I think Thursday I'm gonna try to go to Lake Iroquois. is my plan right now.
That's got some
Seven.
big fish in it, dude. That's got a sneaky little supply down there.
So there's been some big largemouth, and I mean this is a couple years ago, but it's usually right off the beach, and you've
Yep.
been there a few times, so you know how it gets really
Yep.
weedy right there on the edge of the buoys, and
Yep.
that's where it's been. But you also have to pick through all the pickerel that want to play too. So
Yeah, dude. So it's really weird. You know what? You know what I have found? If you haven't fished there in 2 years, I will tell you the cheat code I found is that the morning bite is fucking awful there. It's afternoon bite.
yeah, well, I'd be going after work, so that would work for me.
Perfect. Yeah, dude. So it's weird. I won't fish there. I have literally blackballed that place for mornings now because I tried it this year 4 times, and I actually blanked 2 of the 4, and the other times I didn't catch like 10-inch, 12, like anything that's under 12 inches. I consider it almost blanking. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
it's like a
Well, a
ten
lot of
inch
the tournaments too. I don't know if you've noticed, they're moving up the minimum from 12 to 14 now. So, like that Strike King one I signed up for in September, their minimum is 14
I wish we
instead
would
of
drop
12.
ours
So,
down. I think ours should be 10. I really do. They did 10 in like a lot of the Slay Nation trails do 10. Frankie does 10 in his in Connecticut.
yeah,
Like, why not? Why I would rather see you guys that blanked have 50
50
inches.
inches minimum.
You know what I mean? Like it's just like and I want to be able to take advantage of it too because there's been events where like I was really worried and I kept catching an 11 and a half and an 11 and a half and 11 and a quarter and I'm
Yeah.
like
I was gonna say, you get that one that's just below 12, and it's like, I can't even enter you. It's like,
yep. And it's just aggravating. So I kind of wish we would drop our limit to 10 because there's no, I know the legal limit is 12, but we're catch and release. So that doesn't apply to that. Those rules don't apply with the state laws because we're not
right.
actually keeping it. We're measuring it and throwing it back. So it doesn't matter. So, but yeah, no, I wish we would do that. But I do think like, I definitely want to have like a meeting with the guys and we should definitely like as a group collectively pick better lakes next year. And it's not necessarily the fish quality thing is subjective because I mean we've averaged 80 inches. Everybody else hasn't necessarily, but
No, I
like
mean, 80 inches was definitely possible at Elmore because I
yeah,
hit it
yeah.
during a pre-fishing. It's just they weren't there.
And honestly, Iroquois wouldn't be a bad place to do a tournament at.
No, I thought about that too. I mean, the access probably the same size as Elmore, and I think Iroquois. I don't know if it's bigger, but it's built different, so you would actually be able to. People would fish it differently. I feel so you wouldn't be on
So
top of each other.
the thing about Iroquois is you've got like a grass flat up north on the access
Yep,
side. You've got a
you got
pad.
to run off down south.
You got runoff down there. You got an island. You got deeper water. There is some docks. There's wood and like ledges on one side. Like there's a lot of different. The whole thing's fishable. Like
Yep.
you can go out in the middle in 40 feet of water and crank and catch fish out there. I've done it with liplesses and shit. So like that would be a good one to do. I think we should do Carmi. I really do. I want to do Carmi.
Yep.
And I've never fished Carmi open water.
The
I
first
haven't
time
done
fishing it was the beginning of this year when I met the Williams for the first time.
it.
Went up there and fished with Chris and Nick, and we had a good day for the 3.5 hours we were fishing before the wind
So,
picked
and
up. And that
the
was
thing about
March.
Carmi, did you guys launch out of the campground launch, or did you go up to the other launch on the other end?
Uh, so I think it was somewhere in the campground because we went into the camp to
Yeah,
get where we were going because it was off season. So
yeah.
nobody was there.
So
But
technically, you have to pay for that during the regular season.
yep.
That's the
But
catch with that one. But there is a state launch on the other end
yep.
that you can go to. But Maury is another one that I definitely would like to see. Maury is really sneaky. I don't know if you ever fished Lake Maury at all.
Nope.
So that place has like Hortonia level largemouth and smallmouth. Like
Yeah, I've heard one of the guys that typically competes in our monthly KBF challenges
I'll probably
fishes out of
Jesse.
there a lot.
Yeah, Jesse. Yeah.
Yep. So, because they're like,
My
oh,
scouting,
it's
my
one of the
scouting
secret
report for
spots, and I was like,
miles.
you don't really have to worry about me traveling 2 hours on a weekday to go there. So,
Yeah, yeah. The the my scouting report for miles came from. I was actually supposed to sleep at Jesse's house for miles
yep,
because the dog ended up screwing me over on that because she just has such bad things. Even do so, Magog, we're camping.
yep.
We're actually gonna go to Brighton. We're gonna go camp by Long Island Pond. It's an hour
Bring it
away, but it's still like. So we're gonna
better than
go.
two,
What's that?
better than 2 hours.
3 for
Three,
me.
yeah, yeah,
About 2 hours and 50 minutes from my house one way, and that's Google Maps, which is never right because they don't account for the fact that I have an old man bladder and I'm gonna have to stop and piss at least twice on the 3 hour drive. So we're actually going up the Saturday before in the morning. We're gonna fish Seymour, and then we're gonna go check into the campground, sleep in the campground, which is an hour away, and then we're gonna drive up from there because that's such a freaking drive. It's not gonna be safe,
yeah,
but there's a lot of lakes that like we could easily like. I don't like the idea of doing a Champlain derby. I don't because the weather could burn us.
yeah. That's the only really factor with the small vessel series is that you really are counting on that weekend to be prestige.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like so the way the permit stuff. I don't know if you know how all that stuff works because I was supposed to do it last year and I just didn't want to deal with all the bullshit. You have to file a permit 30 days in advance, and the state has to approve it. So you have to pay them ahead of time, file 30 days in advance, and then they may or may not approve it depending on how many tournaments are on that body of water. Champlain has a fucking tournament 7 days a week.
Yeah, pretty much.
So there's a possibility that you're going to run into conflict with a bass boat tournament. And there's only, like, in my opinion, like maybe Mallett's Bay, you might be able to get away with it because there's enough coves and places where you could tuck in, where if the weather got shitty, you might be able to have it regardless because you can hide. But Converse Bay is another one that's kind of like it's protected enough, but there's not really a lot of smallmouth or fish in that bay necessarily.
Yeah,
So like, and then it cancels, and then you're done, and then there's not really any way to make it up unless you like double stack another tournament next month,
right.
and
So,
that makes it tricky because a lot of guys, they have lives. Like not everybody has like no life like me and just fishes every single weekend and does whatever the hell they want and has an understanding wife that's willing to just let me disappear for an
right.
entire weekend fishing with some Canadian kid that I met on the internet. It's like that's
Yeah.
like we were talking about that at Waterbury, dude. It was one of the funniest things. Literally, do you know the story of like how I met Bear?
No.
It's because of this podcast. I posted in the 802 fishing group looking for people who wanted to just come on and talk fishing because I needed guests for the podcast. And he was the first one to respond. So then I had him on. We ended up talking, and his whole premise of coming on was he was buying a kayak, and he
Yep.
wanted to ask questions. So he wanted to basically ask me a bunch of questions. It was a perfect kind of fit for him asking, all the questions that I kind of already knew about kayak fishing. And then he basically became my co-host for a few episodes, and then decided that he has a life because he's, a young kid, and basically we became friends, and then we started doing collaborations because he does YouTube. That's literally how that happened. And then we just started fishing together, and then like we were fishing in my boat on Waterbury, and I was like, if you think about the logic of this, it's actually really funny because like I was like, how do you explain, because he still lives at his parents' house, and I was like, how do you explain this to your parents? And he goes, what? And I'm like, you basically had to tell your parents, hey, I'm driving to Vermont to go fish with a mid-30s guy that I met on the internet, and we're going to go to a remote place where there's no cell phone service and there's absolutely no way for me to communicate with you.
Yeah.
But it's okay because he does YouTube. Like, like it's
Right.
like everything about like us hanging out is like stranger danger on like a multiple level. But and then it just became a point where we've done probably, I think we were trying to figure it out when we were fishing on Sunday. I'm pretty sure we've done 10 or 11 trips this year because we did ice fishing 3 or 4 times plus the tournaments alone. And
Yep.
it's just like, well, we were texting today. I was like, so do you want to camp out? How do you want to do this? What are we going to do for that? Like, we're constantly like trying to, but that's the good thing about making content is it's hard to find not only a partner that can get along with, because tournaments, as you know, like you're by yourself. Can you imagine catching zero fish and having someone else that's pissed off on your team also catching no fish?
Yeah.
Like,
You're gonna feed
it
off that
gets
energy.
there's been a few times where like I've watched my reactions talking to him when I'm watching the footage back, and I'm like, wow, I was kind of a dick. Like I literally apologized to him after Chin and Rez. I was like, dude, I was a straight asshole. I was like, I was arrogant. There's a reason why you guys that watch my Chin and Rez video that there was music in the background of the whole thing because I was bitching and complaining the whole fucking day. Like, no joke, was just like pissed the whole time. And it wasn't because he did anything wrong, it was because I was just not catching fish and mad about it.
Yep.
I had a game plan that just fell apart immediately because all the fish that were on beds the weekend before were gone.
Yeah.
So, all right,
Yeah, I
dude,
was
we're
gonna say
going on
that.
an hour and a half, so we probably should wrap this up soon. I'm sure you probably gotta work or do something or have some
Yeah.
sort of.
Yeah, unfortunately, back to the 5 days schedule for the time being. So it's
Well,
always
definitely,
fun.
you guys will see him very soon because I have a video with him in it coming out very, very soon. Plus, the tournament videos are going to come out next month. So that's the one thing that's really weird is like the event from Sunday isn't going to hit till September because I still have my Miles video hasn't even hit yet.
Yeah, I was gonna say I haven't seen that one yet.
Yeah, that one's going to be interesting. That one's fun to watch because you see me and him arguing. But we'll definitely have him on again. Like I said, we're probably going to do some content. And honestly, maybe depending on, I mean, it's a little closer for you, but if you're interested, dude, you could probably honestly come camp with us too if you wanted to just hang out for the day.
Oh, for Magog.
Hey, dog, yeah,
Yeah, I think I'm gonna camp because I mean it's not that far for me, but it's like an hour and 30 minutes.
yeah,
Which I mean, when you're waking up at 4 in the morning, that's still a pretty decent drive. So
right. But yeah, I can talk to Bear because he's just jumping on the site. I'm paying for the site. He's buying food. We're gonna literally like grill hot dogs.
yep.
So we were planning on fishing Seymour during the day, check into the campground, hang out, drink beer, grill some food, and just hang out on the site, pass out, and
Yep. I was
go
gonna say I
off.
already put the bug in the wife's ear. Probably might even take the family up.
There you go.
You know, keep everybody occupied and
See,
hang out with
that's
everybody.
why I picked a state park, dude. Because I mean, it's not there's not really a good state park near it, but Brighton's only 45 minutes, and we got Island Pond right there. We got Spectacle Lake, and then we've got Seymour, and 45-minute drive from the campground. So we can go fish because you can't check in till 2 anyway. So we'll just hit Seymour. We'll fish it till like 3 or 4. Pack up, go get food, hang out at the campsite, drink beer, rig up for the morning, and pass out. And then at the very least, I can fall asleep at like 8 o'clock and get up at 5 and not have to get up at 2 o'clock in the morning to drive to the fucking lake.
Right. Yeah.
So
Possibly hit a deer.
that was close, dude. Yeah, you guys haven't seen that part yet. I think I have that on video actually because I was recording B-roll. I shouldn't have been doing that with my phone,
But
but yeah, guys, we're gonna end the video right here. I want to thank everyone who hang out with us. I don't know if you saw, but your boy was hanging out with us all
oh
day.
nope. Yeah, I didn't see the
Those of you
comments,
who
but
don't know, any of the aerial footage that has been in my channel is from this guy right here. And I really, really appreciate all the footage that was provided. I don't have a drone, but he was willing to share the videos with us and actually shared it to Brad, who then Google Drived it to me, and then basically I put it on there. So um, check out his channel because he's got quite a bit of stuff. Like he pretty much does everything. Like just kind of flies the drone around and
yeah,
films everything.
yeah, he
So
covers events, local events, hiking, like places you wouldn't normally see. So he does a lot. A lot more driving than I do.
I'm gonna have some conversation with him because when we get the schedule for next year, I'm like, hey, do me some reconnaissance flyovers and send me the videos.
Right. Yeah.
So, but yeah, we'll
Yeah.
definitely do this again. We'll get on. I might even try to do it like after the end of the season. I want to try to get like a bunch of the guys from the trail to just kind of review the whole season, but we'll do it again. But yeah,
All
I
right,
want
man.
to thank you guys for hanging out, and we are going to jump out of here, and I will see you guys next Tuesday.
All right. Take it easy, man.